It all started on a Sunday morning, the kind of morning where the world seems to move a little slower, wrapped in the quiet hum of routine. I had just brewed my coffee, the rich aroma curling through the air like a comforting blanket, when I heard the knock. It wasn't loud or urgent, just a polite tap, tap, tap at my front door. Odd. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there he was, Jack, my next-door neighbor. I'd seen him plenty of times, of course. We'd exchanged pleasantries in the hall, waved when our paths crossed on the way to the mailbox, but that was the extent of it. He was the kind of man who kept to himself, with a quiet confidence that intrigued me. A little taller than average, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes that always seemed to have a spark of humor hiding in them. "Hi, sorry to bother you," he began, holding up a wrench. "Do you have a spare pipe wrench? Mine decided to give up on me mid-project." I couldn't help but smile. "A pipe wrench? Let me check. Come on in while I look." He hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. I led him to the kitchen, where my small collection of tools was tucked away in a drawer. As I rummaged through it, we fell into easy conversation. It turned out Jack was fixing a leaky sink, a task he'd admitted he wasn't particularly skilled at. "But hey, it's never too late to learn," he added with a sheepish grin that made me laugh. When I finally handed him the wrench, he thanked me and promised to return it soon. But before he left, he glanced at the pile of books on my coffee table. "You're a reader?" he asked, picking up one of the novels. "Guilty as charged," I replied. "What about you?" "I dabble," he said, flipping through the pages. "This one's a favorite of mine." And just like that, our conversation stretched far beyond leaky sinks and pipe wrenches. We talked about books and movies, travel and hobbies. I learned that Jack had spent years working as a civil engineer, that he loved hiking, and that he had a knack for baking, a hobby he picked up during the pandemic. By the time he left, I realized I'd been smiling so much my cheeks hurt. The days that followed were filled with more encounters. A wave from across the driveway turned into a shared cup of coffee on my porch. A quick hello at the mailbox became a long walk around the neighborhood. Each interaction felt easy and natural, like we'd known each other far longer than we had. And yet, there was an undercurrent of something more, a subtle tension that neither of us acknowledged, but both seemed to feel. One evening after he'd returned my wrench and stayed for dinner, it happened. We were sitting on my couch, a bowl of popcorn between us, watching an old movie on TV. The room was bathed in the warm glow of the screen, and the sound of rain pattering against the windows added to the cozy atmosphere. I laughed at a particularly cheesy line, and when I turned to share the moment with him, I found him already looking at me. There was something in his gaze, a softness, a depth that made my heart skip a beat. "You have a beautiful laugh," he said quietly. I felt a blush creep up my cheeks. "Thank you," I murmured, suddenly very aware of the small space between us. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, like the air before a storm. And then, as if drawn by an invisible force, we both leaned in. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but it quickly deepened, a cascade of emotions we'd both been holding back. It was as if a dam had burst, and all the feelings we'd been too afraid to name came rushing out. When we finally pulled away, I searched his face for any sign of regret, but all I saw was warmth and sincerity. "I've wanted to do that for a while," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Me too," I confessed. From that moment on, everything changed. We spent more time together, learning each other's quirks and sharing parts of our lives we kept hidden from others. Jack told me about his late wife, how he'd spent years focused on work and grief, never imagining he'd feel this way again. I shared my own fears and insecurities, the ways I'd closed myself off after my divorce, convinced that love wasn't in the cards for me anymore. Our relationship wasn't without its challenges. We were both set in our ways, with decades of habits and routines that didn't always align. But we navigated those differences with patience and humor, finding joy in the process of building something new together. One evening, as we watched the sun set from his back porch, Jack took my hand in his. "You've brought so much light into my life," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't realize how much I'd been missing until you came along." I squeezed his hand, my heart full. "You've done the same for me," I replied. "I never thought I'd find this kind of connection again, but here we are." Looking back, it's hard to believe how much my life has changed in such a short time. What started as a simple knock on the door turned into something I never expected but desperately needed. Jack and I found each other at a time when we'd both stopped looking, and that's what makes our story so special. It's proof that love can find you when you least expect it, and that it's never too late to open your heart to new possibilities. And for that, I'll always be grateful.